tell them what's happening. Let's take it back from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. So, the best way to start is kind of talking about what the money source came from. So, tonight we're going to be talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is a federal spending bill that passed into law last year on March 11th. This money came out to help the smallest sectors of our community due to the fact that all the pandemic funding that came before that, like the PPP loan, the CARES Act, and things of that nature, were for more bigger organizations. So this was literally to rescue Americans. And so it was a multi-billion-dollar funding source that was split up to states and different local municipalities. Now, every state got money. However, certain municipalities like Springfield got a separate portion of money because we've been disproportionately affected by COVID. So that means our minority populations that were hardest hit. That means people of color. That means veterans, women, LGBTQ, and of course, our youth and senior populations. Those demographics allowed us to get a separate pot of money. So the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, got $5.2 billion, and the city of Springfield received $123.8 million. And so when we received that money, we received it in May of 2021. And there was supposed to be an urgent effort, because that's what it was allocated for, an urgent effort to help our communities, individuals, families, small businesses, nonprofits, seniors, the list goes on. All right, so that's kind of like the basis of the funding. Do we want to just jump into what happened so far with it, or how you want to go?
No, let's just jump right in, man. Let's do what we do.
All right, so we got that 123.8 million in May of 2021, and that was supposed to be used to again rescue our communities. The first thing the money was spent on was actually acquiring a property downtown Springfield. So Mayor Sarno bought a property that was valued at $2.7 million. Now that's through the encumbrances, that's risen to $3.5 million, and unfortunately, the bill is written so loosely because it covered the whole country and all of our territories. So different places have different needs. So you can spend it on infrastructure, you can spend it on premium pay, you can spend it on all these different things, whatever's going to help your economy recover. And so unfortunately, they chose to use that infrastructure section, which was specifically for access.
Go ahead, my bad.
Which is specifically for access to clean water, storm and sewage drainage, as well as broadband infrastructure, because our communities disproportionately did not have access to internet as much as others. So that's what the infrastructure portion was supposed to be towards. They took that loophole and acquired property. During that same time, they were having dozens and dozens of meetings with community members, community organizations, stakeholders, executives, trying to survey us on how to best spend this money and how to make the process more equitable. I was one of the people that they interviewed, and alongside some executives at Berkshire Bank, I met with the director of the fund, so the Tom Moore, multiple times, and we described in detail there needs to be short application, it needs to be as little information as possible. And just so everybody knows, for us to get this $1 million, it was based on eligibility. They did a formula with the community block grant, and they said, okay, Springfield has this need, they'll get this money. Mayor Sarno only had to put his name on it, our account numbers on it. He had to sign it. He had to give them an address, and he had to agree to receiving the award. That's how they got the $123 million. So we were advocating that they make the process for us to access it just as short. Unfortunately, after all those meetings, all those suggestions, they did the opposite. So the application was supposed to come out on September 15th. Instead, it came out a month later, October 15th, but they didn't accept applications until November 1st. The applications, instead of being a one page or front and back, it ended up being 6+ pages and asking for so much information that isn't required by law. And I'm talking about things that could potentially be incriminating. For example, they asked for if you owe money to the city of Springfield. Now, that has nothing to do with the law. That has nothing to do with the funding. And the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity actually does not have any jurisdiction over what you owe to the city. So that was a red flag, because I'm like, okay, are you sharing this information with other departments? Are people who apply to ARPA now going to be a target by other aspects of the city government? Anyway, so the application is riddled with excessive and problematic questions.
Right.
That being said, once they started accepting applications, it was supposed to be a 5 to 7 week process. They didn't communicate with a lot of the organizations that are submitted in November, on November 1st or that week, until the end of November. And it was just a notification of, we received your application, basically.
Right.
And then December, they started giving out awards. Now, again, remember, we received this money in May. It was supposed to go to rapid recovery efforts. It was supposed to go to emergency efforts. And the first funding went out in December. Out of all the applications they got, they only chose 5 applications in December for the first round of funding.
Really?
Yes. Now, in that first round of funding, the issue that came out about it was those 5 organizations were all very high grossing organizations. And I want to be very clear while we talk about this. Everyone was hit hard by COVID. There's no way you didn't get through a pandemic and you weren't hit hard. This money specifically, however, are for those who are hit hardest and cannot apply to other places. So when I talk about larger organizations getting this funding, it's not hating. It's not that I'm mad. It's that they're not supposed to be getting it first. The American Rescue Plan Act actually says to prioritize those with the lowest income, those that are minority, and those that have the disproportionate consequences against them. So anyway, that being said, the first 5 funding went out. There was organizations that all had a brick and mortar, which again is not an issue within itself, but it's the fact that it's supposed to be accessible to everyone. And one of the organizations, while the owner of it is absolutely phenomenal, he's an amazing community member, he's also someone who has a contract with the city. And he's also someone who is affiliated with other parts of the city as well. And so there was, I know you guys did an excellent story on that in the Metro Record. Congrats on that. But again, the point is that he was able to access this money before essentially families that are hungry or people who are about to lose their homes, which is what this immediate intervention was supposed to be for. Right. Also going along that lines, that was at that point the largest grant that was given out. He requested $75,000 and he received $75,000. Majority of everyone either asked for less or only received less than what they asked for. So that was the whole situation why there needed to be some clarity there, and just the simple fact that there's people that are hurting. That being said, the second round of funding came out and the mess just got hotter. So they did at that point 11 small businesses and 5 nonprofits, but the nonprofit category is being misused profusely. For example, in the second round of funding, the Basketball Hall of Fame received $50,000 in the nonprofit sector. Wow. And we know for a fact, anyone who lives in Springfield, as you could be in love with basketball, you can love the Basketball Hall of Fame, you know they're not providing emergency services. You know they're not providing anything that is going to support the immediate relief of COVID. Right. So they shouldn't have gotten money first. Then you go and see that the Forest Park Zoo got $100,000 in the second round under nonprofits. At that point, we were still social distancing. We still have mask mandates. The zoo is closed. It's the winter. There's no way you can tell me that animals deserves money before the people in the community. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And I say the same thing for Junior Achievement, who also received almost $100,000, where I'm a Junior Achievement kid. I went to the stock market challenge. I did all of those things. Read to the elementary schoolers. I understand the impacts of their programming, but when we're talking about what's going to help the community the most, it's not these major white-led organizations.
Right.
Now, during that same time that those funding sources were coming out, something that's very important to know is the fact that the state ARPA funding that I told you about, the multi-billion-dollar funding that the state received, they themselves were earmarking funds. And so for those of you guys that don't know, earmarking funds means that essentially senators, that's one of their amazing powers, is that they're able to say this, and that organization deserve funding, and they can essentially skip the line, legally, of course, but skip the line of having to go through an application process, and the senator writes into the law that this money is going to go to these people. Why is that important? It's important because the ARPA money was earmarked to a few community organizations, quote unquote, nonprofits, before individuals and families that needed it. I can give you a few examples. So this is the same December time period. The Springfield Cultural Partnership, which is, I used to work there, love that place. I think they're awesome. They received $40,000 right off the bat for operation costs and things of that nature. They solely work in the TDI district, which means like a 6 blocks radius downtown. That $40,000 isn't touching the north end, the south end, Forest Park. It's not touching anywhere else. It's staying in that 6 blocks radius. The community music school also got $100,000 from the state earmark funds. They're a nonprofit organization, and technically they're a private school. So it wasn't even like you gave money to the Springfield public school system. You gave it to this very specific entity who does more programming than schooling for our students anyway, and who was closed for most of the year because of COVID. That being said, we also have the Springfield Museums, and they received $200,000 from earmark funding. This is particularly important because a portion of it was operating funds, but they received $100,000 for something else. And I just want to take a second to actually read what they received money for, because I think that it's important for people to understand how this works. And so let me just read it so you can hear it.
Go for it.
Provided further that not less than $100,000 should be expanded for Springfield museums for exhibitions, upgrades, and programs that explain and promote understanding of the history and significance of minority populations, and include a Latino arts festival which incorporates a permanent exhibit. Now, when you read that, it sounds lovely. But when you break it down in comparison to what's actually going on in Springfield, you have to take a second. You're telling me the Springfield Museum, a white-led organization, high-grossing nonprofit that have many leaders in it that don't live in Springfield, right, just got $100,000 to tell Black and Latino stories, throw a Latinos art festival, and hold an exhibit in their historically white museum. The reason why this is an issue is because there are plenty of Black and brown people who are doing this work already. Yep. And they got passed over. Yep. But white people talking about Black people deserve $100,000. That doesn't make sense. On top of the fact that you're giving access to an organization who has historically been funded through earmarks and other grant-like opportunities in comparison to their Black and brown peers, and who has historically not included Black and brown people in their exhibits, in their history, and their festivals. And so now when there's money available, you're going to give it to them because they're claiming to now put some Black stuff in their museum. And that's not okay. That is a complete misappropriation of funds.
But actually, they're not even putting Black stuff in the museum. It's real specific around Latino. Yep. So what they end up doing is you get the Black and the Latino community fighting over the breadcrumbs that they're going to spend. So we go, well, why are they hooking up the Latinos? Latinos say, well, why are the black people upset that they're hooking us up? Meantime, we're fighting. These people reap the majority of the benefits, and they continue to skate along as if nothing happens. And they say, I don't know what's wrong with those people we tried to help. I just want to throw that out there just so people understand the game. You know, that Wisdom syndrome is something else. But go ahead. I'm going to let you finish.
No, it's absolutely true. That divide and conquer methodology is ages old, and it still works.
Absolutely.
It still works. And so to understand that this is emergency funding, and then to understand where it's going, we can't be okay with it. And so this earmark funding, there's also in the first round Harvest Corp, it's Harvest Wellness Corporation or something like that. They receive funding from earmarks, and they also receive funding from Springfield. So now we're getting into the whole double dipping thing. So this earmarks that we're talking about, so with the Springfield Cultural Partnership and the Springfield Community Music School, Harvest Corp, all of them, they have received 2 portions of funding before many people in Springfield has touched anything. So, for example, the Springfield Cultural Partnership, as I just said, received $40,000 in earmark funding from our Hampton County senators in December. And last week, they received $150,000 from Mayor Sarno. The Community Music School received $100,000 in December from the state. And now, last week, they received $150,000.
Oh, wow.
From Mayor Sarno. You can't tell me the Community Music School needed $250,000 of ARPA funding. There's just no way. The groups, the community they serve, the programs that they offer, you cannot tell me over so many people that are behind on their mortgages. We literally had to do a moratorium so that people weren't going to get kicked out of their house. Right. Because we are so far behind on rent and mortgages. And somehow the $5,000 a family may need, the $10,000 the family may need is too much, but you can give $150,000. And again, it was the same type of thing where it was like to support their heritage programming. White-led organization getting money to do Black or brown things without any requirement of including Black or brown people. And that's literally just happening in front of our faces. And so when we get into this last round of funding, it's so important to really connect the dots, because that's $3.3 million. That's another chunk of money that's gone. Right. And it went to mainly businesses that aren't going to have an impact on the greater community. They ended up doing 2 of the largest portion sizes as well. I do want to say that to $500,000 to BHN, and I believe there was another distribution of $500,000 to another the Caring Health Center, which makes sense, right? They've been describing being overworked. The Caring Health Center has held the community down, especially the one in Forest Park and things of that nature. So it makes perfect sense. However, we still are losing a lot of money at the same time. The other 2 funds I want to talk about really quickly is important, because those who can access it, we really need you to access it, because they've been moved to a pot where it needs expertise. So there's a Build Back Springfield program where they took $15 million of the ARPA funds and they put it in the Econ Development Department, the Planning and Econ Dev Department. Now, this fund, I totally don't agree with, and I'll tell you why. We know that the infrastructure bill has passed on the federal level, and there's going to be lots of funding coming to fix the infrastructure of the country in general. We haven't had a huge infrastructure overhaul since the 1940s, and we're paying for it hard right now. So that money's coming. That being said, moving $15 million of money that can be accessed by the community to a fund to rehabilitate, adapt, and use buildings, it sounds like a good idea to some people who can access it. When you look at that application, there is so much to it that the average community member may not feel it's accessible to them. You have to have an architect approval of your whatever plans to reuse and adapt a building. You have to already have gone to the Historical Preservation Society and make sure that it's in a historical district and get the documentation for that. You have to have matching funds, right? So this grant is supposed to just be able to be given out, but now that they divided it into this allocation, those who are accessing it has to have the same or more money than what they're asking for already, which we know in our community that already limits a lot of different people. And it goes from being a solely investment, grant-based, free money experience to having to have thousands and thousands of dollars to access the money that was set for free for us. So making that application so complicated really cuts out a lot of our community that may have been able to get into the investment game, to get into the rehab, adapt, and reuse game, or maybe have been in it already, but don't have the capital to match these funds. Because they put that match criteria on it, it takes out a lot of people. The next one that I want you guys to know about that I agree with it being dispersed, but I want to make sure people are using it, is the Neighborhood Recovery Fund. So everyone should be contacting their neighborhood councils to see if they're applying for these funds, because it will disappear if they don't. There's $12 million set aside for neighborhoods to access, and you're supposed to be applying for things like paving your sidewalks, to paving over the potholes. You can apply to have funding added, so there's an addition to your community center. Anything that's gonna positively affect the greater neighborhood that you're serving, you can get funding through that. They move that money, but there hasn't been a lot of promotion about that money being moved. And so what happens is when money is allocated and it's not being used, as time goes by, they now have evidence that the resource was out there, it's not being used, so they don't want it, and they have justification to be able to redistribute those funds. So we need to make sure that as they're moving it into these different pots, we're watching it and we're trying to access it just the same.
You really put some time into this.
I have, and man, it's been a process staying abreast on all the different shifting elements, all the different funding sources and all that. But I'm a student of history. You know me, I love history. And what people don't realize is pandemic economies are lit. There's a lot of generational wealth in this country that came up in pandemic economies. I don't even know where I get this saying from at this point, but I believe it was one of my old professors that said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Because in crises, that's when things are created. That's when anything goes, right? And usually what's lacking is the capital for a good idea. In pandemic economies, we can't let the economy crash. So we had to flood the communities with monies. This was done after the Great Depression. That's how we got our social welfare system. This was done in so many different times. After the Spanish flu, money floods when there's pandemics, whether it's financial or biological, like the one we just experienced. That being said, 45, I don't say his name because, it's like, ugh. But 45, his family actually came up off of a pandemic economy. His was a great grandfather, whoever, got contracts from the government, that's New York and New Jersey, to build properties across boroughs, like across a lot of places. And they actually got money to do that. Wow. So you don't call that welfare though, right? But they got money to quote unquote invest in these communities. And because they were the developers doing the work, they got paid off of it. So I didn't want our community to miss out on the fact that money was available, because a lot of us, I was too young, but a lot of us missed out on the pandemic economy after the stock market crashed. And that was just in 2008. There was money, mad money in our communities, and it was the word. No one knew how to apply. No one knew how to access that. No one even understood that.
I mean, aside from you, no one's really talking about that as badly as we need this information. So, I mean, I think, oh my God, thank the ancestors for you. I don't know what we would do without you. Because, I mean,
stop it.
It's crazy because there's a lot of us, we feel like we're up to date on what's happening and we're staying abreast of current issues. But in reality, we're staying abreast of the headlines.
Yeah.
But we're not actually reading
the bills, reading the earmark funding, reading all. Yeah, nah, I'm going through it.
So
they be lying.
Is it too late for people to apply for any of these pots of funding? What pots are still open?
No, all of them are still open. All of them are still open. Here, so I'll give you the official deadlines, and then I'll give you like the background information. So official deadlines, the ARPA applications, again, were made available on September 15, 2021. You could begin submitting your applications on November 1st, 2021. The deadline for submitting your application isn't until November 1st, 2024. Now, that deadline was made by the Springfield Department of Recovery and Business Continuity because they actually have to, by law, by federal law, allocate these funds by December 31st, 2024. Anything that isn't allocated, which means anything that doesn't have a place that it's going to be going to by December 31st, is going to be liquidated and returned back to the U.S. Department of Treasury. Now, the date following that that's important is December 31st, 2026, because anyone who receives money has to have spent it all by that date or you owe it back to the government. So those are the official dates. But let me tell you, bro, the money is going as we speak. You get what I'm saying? There's all these backroom deals. There's all these people meeting. Absolutely. Hey, what do you think about this application? Hey, listen, the heavy hitters, the names we don't speak of, the executives, they've been in rooms with the directors and breaking deals so that they can have it. Even if they haven't been awarded yet, there's a lot more money allocated than what we know.
Right.
And it's just straight like that.
So now, before you move to the next one, if there's a business out there that wants to apply for these funds, now that particular pot is for businesses, correct? Or is that for anyone?
Which pot?
The ARPA ones, the ones you just described.
Okay, so let me go over the different applications then. So the $123.8 million is for everything, right? Okay. It's for everything. Technically, it's based off of eligibility. So the City of Springfield could have divvied out this money any way it wanted. It could have gave checks to everyone if they felt like it. Similarly to how the state just gave some premium pay checks to some people, essential workers, they could have done it that way. They chose to do a grant process, and they broke it down, I believe, in 6 categories. So there's a new business category. That new business category is anyone who started a business that's less than a year old. So you don't have any tax returns, you don't have any profit and loss statements, annual statements. It's less than a year old. You can also apply to new business if you just have an idea and you have nothing at all. So please, because they have not been communicating this, a new business does not have to be in existence. If you've been thinking about something for the past couple of years, but COVID didn't allow you to get it done, you can apply. So the 2 things that makes you eligible for ARPA funding is this. 1, you have to be a Springfield citizen or a Springfield business with a Springfield business address, or you want to create a business in Springfield. And I'll explain more of that in the end. If you have that, the second part is your COVID impact. This fund is to mitigate the consequences of COVID-19. So you cannot access it, you cannot access it until you describe how COVID has affected you or your business. Now, there's a plethora of ways how COVID could affect you. If you were negatively affected, that's easily. You have the bills, you have the financial discrepancies, you have those records that shows that you lost your job, or you had less hours, or you had to spend more on your internet. If there's a financial discrepancy, there's probably evidence to showcase that you need money to mitigate that, to balance that out. That's one way you could describe COVID, your impact. You may not have been financially affected, though, in a negative way. You could have been financially affected in a positive way, meaning that because you're an essential worker, like a truck driver or a travel nurse, you had to work even more than even more than you were before the pandemic. And that could have created some mental health, work-life balance, those kind of issues. You can ask for COVID spending for that. On the other hand, it might not have affected you negatively emotionally. You just made bread and you want to make more bread. You can say that, oh, COVID made me realize the capacity of my business and what it was worth. And I want to expand now. I need capital to expand. You can get COVID money for that. Any major appliance in your house that broke down during COVID-19, you can get funding for that. If your bill for your internet went up because you had 5 kids on remote learning at the same time, you had a college student home, whatever it is, there's funding available. So that's what I mean in terms by eligibility. You're a resident of Springfield, do business in Springfield, or want to start a business in Springfield, and you have a COVID impact statement. That goes for any application I'm about to discuss. So new business, I already explained, less than a year old, or you haven't started. Then you have small business, which is there's a requirement of 5 years, but they changed it. I believe it's 2 to 5 years now. There's still a gap, but we're working on it. Then there's also seniors, which is so important. The senior population has a specific pot of money because they were so disproportionately affected by COVID, whether it was isolation or medical issues or mental health risks, all of those things. They weren't able to go out and do their, if they were still working. Seniors have their own pot of money. So families with anyone that's over 60, please help them fill out those individual applications. Then there's also households, guys. So households meaning it could be your physical property that needs help, that you need financial support with, or it could be mitigating the bills, or it could be you have more people living in your house. Whatever your COVID story is for your household, you can get money specifically for that. It does not have to be business related at all. Then you have the nonprofit category. So the nonprofit category is your average nonprofit that you're thinking about, your 501c3. But then it's also all the other ones. So 5, 6, 7, 8. That's for religious organizations as well. That's for some educational organizations. You guys can receive funding as well. Then there is the neighborhood fund, which we already talked about, that $12 million. The infrastructure fund, which is in that Build Better Back Springfield program. And then lastly, there's the economic development and job creation fund. Now, this category is important because, one, we need to watch it. We need to watch it very closely because this allows people outside of Springfield to access this. I'm not totally against it, and here's why. There are many organizations who wanted or have worked in Springfield, have lived in Springfield, have clientele in Springfield, that has always wanted to build in Springfield, but hasn't addressed outside of Springfield. They still have invested in the community. I could think of so many. Breaking Bread Kitchen has a whole clientele in this area. So does Crave Restaurant. There's so many nonprofit organizations as well who has a big Springfield audience. So if they wanted to say, hey, I want to start a brick and mortar in Springfield, I want to officially have an office space in Springfield, I serve this community, I need support to serve it further, they can access these funds. But besides those type of people that we know are on the ground and actually do benefit Springfield, there's plenty of other people outside of Springfield that can make deals to access these funds. So we have to make sure that money isn't just flowing out of the Econ Dev category. A tale that we can look to is actually right next door, which is Holyoke. Y'all, Holyoke got played. They got played. Holyoke received $38 million, right? And they had both rounds of their RFPs out and closed before, I believe, October. So somehow they got the money in May with us. They put out the applications and then they closed them by October. So it was that short of a period of time. when you go and look at where those funds were allocated, they paid themselves first, which they're allowed to do, right? They're allowed to give premium pay to essential workers. So the public works department got money, the police department got money, the fire department got money, like going down the list, all those people got money. Then you get to the nonprofit organizations. Some are deserving, right? Boys and girls clubs, things of that nature. However, they did not make a single process for any individual community member to access those funds. So not a single family, not a single household got any money from the ARPA funds that was sent because of their demographics. But instead, white-led, high-grossing nonprofit received that. Even Springfield ate off of Holyoke. Because Springfield Housing Authority has buildings in Holyoke, they were able to get funds from Holyoke. Now, again, I want to be very clear. I am not saying that these organizations are bad and we should demonize them. They're not, right? Everybody got to eat. But what I'm saying is they have received funding prior to this, and they have access to way more different grant opportunities as a municipality department, as a high grossing nonprofit, that the average community member doesn't have. And if we're talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, we're expecting our individual citizens to be rescued. And Holyoke has so many issues that goes unaddressed, from the opioid crisis to teenage pregnancy to all these different access to medical. There's so many things that money could have gone towards. Our education system in Holyoke is in receivership. So like there's literally 1,000 things that money could have went towards before the same organizations who already got COVID relief funding should have gotten that money. So looking at Holyoke, we can recognize that this isn't a game and this money is going to get spent unapologetically. We can look at Chicopee as well. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Chicopee, I found it so funny. Chicopee didn't even do an RFP process. So Chicopee did a community survey for the millions of dollars they got, and they asked, what do you want us to spend it on? They didn't give the survey results or any evidence, but they said that the community asked for all of their money to go towards infrastructure, which sounds absolutely insane, because if the community, all aspects of it, were able to give a say, there's no way that buildings would have gotten the money before the families and the individuals that needed it. You can't convince me that survey said, we don't need any money. We want you to redevelop and adapt and reuse buildings across Chicopee. Again, I'm not saying that the buildings don't need help. I'm just saying we're not going to personify buildings. We're not going to personify inanimate objects and talk about its value and its history without looking at the humans that are alive and in need now. The same way you can't convince me that the Forest Park Zoo needed money before the many students that I know that are hungry right now. So, I forgot, man. How did I forget? Premium pay. I didn't talk about it yet. So another category that this funding can go towards is premium pay. And so there's a lot of essential workers who did not get access to all the perks, right? They didn't get to stay home. I know it was complicated. I know it was other issues, but they didn't get to stay home for long periods of time. They also were at risk because their jobs were outside in the prime of COVID. And then they also didn't get to receive things like unemployment, right? Because they were still working. They were never unemployed. That being said, the American Rescue Plan Act allows for premium pay for essential workers, which means to mitigate the fact that they didn't access the pandemic resources, they're able to get a boost of money for their hard work during which they deserve as essential workers. Our community, the city of Springfield, did a premium pay fund, and they did a premium pay program. But right now, if you ask any teachers, if you ask any educators, any doctors or nurses or truck drivers, if they received essential workers premium pay, they would tell you no, because they couldn't. Unfortunately, the city of Springfield decided that they're going to put $5 million in a premium pay account, and the only people who could access that account were people who worked for the city of Springfield in the building during COVID-19. While I'm not hating on the fact that the city of Springfield paid themselves or paid their workers, I'm just acknowledging that there's a large portion of essential workers in the city, and the fact that there wasn't a pathway for all of them to access that money, and you use such a large portion for just yourselves.
Was that publicized?
No, it wasn't publicized. I found out about the premium pay program because I'm thankfully allowed to go to the private financial hearings that are ran by City Councilwoman Chair Tracy Whitfield. The first time I even heard about the premium pay program was after the money was already allocated and encumbered. And it was, who is it? CFO Plant that was doing because at those meetings, it's the CDO, Chief Development Officer, is that Sheehan, and then the Chief Financial Officer Plant that's going over how these monies are spent. The Director of Recovery and Business Continuity, Thomas Moore, is there. The Director of Technical Assistance, Shay Swan, is there, and a plethora of city councilmen. And those are supposed to be the official updates on how the ARPA funding is being spent. And so yeah, that's how I found out about it. I didn't see a single article about premium pay. I didn't see a single flyer on this the mayor's Facebook page or the city website, and I'm on that daily. So it's blatant that they didn't want people to know.
Wow. The things you miss when you don't pay attention to detail.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely insane, man.
And I'm over here just screaming. And I know y'all get tired of me because I'm always yelling, but dog, to be in 2022 and see the same maneuvers that I learned about from the 60s and the 40s and the 20s, absolutely, it is blowing my mind.
Absolutely. And you know what? 50 years from now, it'll be a footnote. And we'll be teaching about this type of stuff and talking about how the municipalities ripped off the people. I mean, I'm with Tracy Whitfield when she talks about how a portion of this should have been used to, help homeowners with their property taxes.
So, let me tell you about that because
get us.
Oh man, that's actually two separate things.
Okay.
Yo, give me a second. So, putting ARPA to the side, right? There's still stuff going on in the city.
Hold on, this is getting really good. I'm gonna sit back and eat my Twinkie while you talk. Go for it.
Yo, this is about to this still gets me lit. Okay, but I think all right. So let's talk about this this program that Councilman Whitfield wanted to do.
Okay.
If you guys missed it, right? A couple millions were just spent a couple weeks ago by our city.
6.5.
6.5. So here's the story. Basically, if you've been downtown, across from Mass Mutual, there's the old Court Square Hotel. It's literally next to Court Square Park, and the courthouse is behind it, across the street from MGM if you're on that side of State Street. Anywho, this building has been developed or is being developed by a conglomerate of organizations. So you got big wigs in there. You got Mass Mutual, you got MGM, you got Wind Development, and of course, you got Springfield's favorite, Picknelly. If you don't know him, he's Peter Pan. Anyway, so they have this project, this huge project of redeveloping the Court Square Hotel. They're supposed to be making apartments, quote unquote luxury apartments, but there's also going to be affordable housing in those apartments. That's the deal. That being said, they have done their quote unquote due diligence and raised money from a plethora of sources. They've gotten federal dollars, they've gotten state dollars, they've gotten local dollars. So they've already gotten money from the city of Springfield. They've got all these investments from bigger organizations. And that all added up to around $59 million. So last, I believe, September, October, a lot of their work got delayed because of everything that was going on with COVID-19. I remember the backup, the cargo, that affected that development project. Still, the last few months, they've kind of struggled, quote unquote, struggled to keep up time with the project because the prices are going up. As we all know, our groceries are going crazy too. That's all normal. It's not normal is this. So the developers, with their $59 million, goes to Mass Housing and says, yo, everything costs more money. We need more money. Mm-hmm. Mass Housing gives the $59 million, $6.5 million. So they get $6.5 million added on. We're at $64 million. No, I did that wrong. 65, whatever it is. Once they get that $6.5 million, there's still a little deficit in terms of to cover the costs of all these delays. So the developers then turn from Mass Housing and the $6.5 million extra they just got and go to their friend, Mayor Sarno. And it's like, yeah, Sarno, Mass Housing gave us $6.5 million and they said we had to get the rest of the money. But they said if we don't get you to match that money, then the product's dead and we're walking away. All lies, by the way. Thank you, Councilman Whitfield, for securing the documents from Mass Housing that showcased they never said that those funds had to be matched. They just said they weren't giving them more. And Sarno knew this. But wait, was that enough information to say, no, you go find some more white dollars somewhere else? No. Instead, Sarno says, okay, we have $6.5 million in free cash. Let's get you on the docket in less than 2 weeks and approve you to get the $6.5 million. Now, if you follow government, you know it's unheard of to request something or try to submit something and get in front of the city councilors in 2 weeks or less. Right. They created a special meeting for this. So they created this false sense of urgency and made a special meeting to hear this. Sarno already gave his approval and went to the city council. The city council, they could not do this on their own, though. The city council has to approve this funding being spent. So, unfortunately, in the city council meeting, a lot of people had a lot to say about how they were rushed and how they need more time and how they feel bullied and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't feel strongly enough against it to say no. So all of our city councilors, all of our city councilors, knowing what's going on with ARPA and our limited access, knowing the demographics of our city and our needs, knowing the statistical evidence of the food insecurity, the health disparities, the environmental issues, knowing all of these things that are happening in the middle of a pandemic still, because we're not all the way out, they complained and then they voted yes to giving a white multi-million-dollar organization, if not billion, right, with the conglomerate they formed more money. And so I just want to be clear. Every single person, say Victor Davila, because he was absent, which is a problem for me, and Justin Hurst and Tracy Whitfield, who said no, everyone else said yes.
Right. Mike said during the subcommittee meeting, damn near apologized to them for having to go through the process. You know, I understand their importance. It's about jobs. It's like the reality is
not about jobs.
No, it was never about jobs. We're talking millionaires screaming that, you know, this project will remain undone unless we receive. They even said they even accused the woman who worked for Mass Housing. Is it Mass Housing? They even accused the woman of being insignificant, irrelevant, and not knowledgeable of what was happening. Yo, it was ridiculous.
Do you know how much we have to do with nothing? They can't even give us $5,000 here and there, $10,000 for the work that we're doing. They tell me, Tiffany, you have to crowdsource. Tiffany, you have to get the people that we're oppressing to pay for their healing. Right. We can't help you. But as soon as white tears come, somehow they got $6.5 million in free cash. And that, I'm bringing it back to your point. That's the money that Tracy Whitfield was talking about. So prior to all of this, Councilman Whitfield asked for that money, a portion of that free cash, to be used to mitigate the rising property taxes. A lot of homeowners got unexpected bills, thousands of dollars more of property taxes than they're used to. Thousands of dollars. Instead of Councilman Whitfield was like, yo, we need to help our community. Let's take $5 million out of this fund and divvy it up in our community. What did they say? Nothing, because it didn't even get to the docket. It didn't even make it on the docket. But somehow these millionaires can access these funds before the community of Springfield. And let me be clear, these millionaires are not from Springfield. Nope. They're not from Springfield. I see that someone asked who voted yes. I'm going to try to do it. So if Justin Hurst and Tracy Whitfield said no, and Victor Davila was absent, we have Marcus Williams said yes, Milo Brown said yes, Kateri Walsh said yes, Tim Allen said yes, Orlando Gomez said yes. Not Orlando Gomez, sorry. Orlando Ramos. Yeah, but he's a state representative. That wasn't right.
No. He's not in the city council. Hold on.
Yeah, he's state representative. I messed up. He used to be city council. There we go. Zyda Govan, Maria Perez.
Yep.
Who are we missing?
Mike Fenton. Don't forget Mike Fenton. He's a great leader.
Michael Fenton.
People Mike Fenton. Everybody acts like he's a nice guy, and I'm like, that dude is the shadiest eel in the sea, man. Be careful. That's all I'm gonna say. Pay attention.
Michael Fenton, Jesse Letterman. Yep. We're missing
Hold on. Jesse Letterman, who gets invited to all the cookouts. He gets invited to all the cookouts, but nobody holds him accountable for how he votes. People are always talking about how Jesse is down for the people from the north end to the square. He's everywhere. But when it comes down to critical votes and being present and visible and speaking out on issues, Jesse Letterman is always absent. Or he completely sides with the mayor or Mike Fenton. So people need to get it straight, man. Just because people smile at you, just because they shake your hand, just because they show up at your cookouts, your weddings, and your funerals, it doesn't mean that they support you. And don't get it twisted. Jesse, we're cool. It's not like I don't dislike him or nothing.
We graduated the same year.
But I do hate his politics, because I think when you're dealing with community, I think community people need to hold him accountable. And I say, typically, we point fingers at black folks, but I'm going to point fingers at Jesse Letterman and be like, where is he when it comes down to critical issues like this? Why is he not supporting Tracy Whitfield? Help me. He needs to come. I would love to invite him on this show and challenge and just really ask him, why didn't you support that? There's been a number of votes that I like to put up on the table and ask him to do that. But go ahead, Tiffany. I digress.
And he was the one, and it would make sense for his quote unquote politics, right? Because he was the one that was advocating for the moratorium so that people didn't lose housing. And he's also the chair of the COVID and Recovery Committee for the city council. It used to be just a COVID-19 committee, but now they added recovery to it. So it is a question, because mortgage owners are some of the ones that's hit most hard and need help in this recovery.
You know what I would like?
He should be advocating for that.
You know what I would like to see right now, Tiffany? I would love to see the data on tax title foreclosure in the city of Springfield over the last 2 to 3 years. I would love to see the number of tax title foreclosures. I'd like to see what neighborhoods they take place in. You're talking about a moratorium, but you're not talking about alleviating the stress that people are going through trying to keep up. There are older folks who have paid off their homes and they're struggling to pay their property taxes, and they're losing their homes because of that. Yeah. Moratorium. Let's talk about how we could have used a couple of millions of dollars to really help some of those people. I'm just saying. But
that's my question. Why is all the things that need to help the Black community in theory or policy alone? Why does no bread come with it? Like, why is there never money?
I don't want to hear.
That's the most confusing aspect of this. There's money for everything. And I want to be very clear.
Yep.
As off-putting as this sounds, it's literally our Black and brown bodies, and only that got the $123.8 million here. Cape Cod didn't get no money. Nantucket didn't get no money. None of these areas that are high grossing areas with high white populations didn't get this extra money. The extra money was specifically to mitigate the consequences that were disproportionately affecting minority populations. So for us to get this money and then only white people have access to it, come on, dog.
Well, I'm gonna mess her name up. Le Monet says there's always a system, but no money. In this case, if you had heard everything that Tiffany was saying, there was plenty of money.
There's so much money.
There was more than enough money to go around. Let me ask you this, because Gary Porter asked the question, can you repeat those from the African Latino community again who said yes? My thing is, all of them said yes with the exception of Tracy and Justin.
Yeah, so the one that we missed though, I see his face. I can't. He's Forest Park.
Victor Davila?
No, it's
Tim Allen.
No.
Yeah, it's Tim Allen.
No. I know all of those. There was one that we didn't say though. He went up. Braxton went up against him.
Melvin.
I always forget him because he's just as bad as all of them.
Yep, the South End. Melvin Edwards.
He voted no. Their boy.
Did he vote no? Yeah, of course he didn't say no. Okay.
No, Melvin Edwards votes with Sarno more than Sarno votes with Sarno. And I'm just trying to be real.
It was black and brown bodies
who brought this money
that brought those dollars here. And we have a majority minority city council. We're one of the few municipalities in New England.
Yeah.
We're the third or fourth largest city in New England. We have a majority minority city council.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious as to why,
And so what's crazy is I tell people that all the time that Springfield we're not doing first right now for majority. We haven't had a black mayor. We've had a woman mayor. We haven't had a black mayor, but majority of our leadership have been black for a long time, have been brown for a long time. And so we have this issue, which is the next issue, right? It's when our leadership get in proximity to whiteness and they forget where they come from. Because they got a little bread, because they got a little power, they're no longer, or they never have voted in the interest of what they would like to say is the minority, but in actuality is the majority of the community. As of 2020, we're 65.6 Black, African-American, and Latino and Hispanic. 65.6%. If we add Asians and Native Americans, we jump up to 70. So it's like, it's a big majority. It's not even 51%.
It's kind of like when we talked about Ferguson a few years ago. Why would you have a population, almost 90-some-odd% of the population is African-American, but the actual controlling leadership was European-American? It's when you look at it, it's absolutely insane. People are so afraid of the repercussions that will come from room 214.
Right.
They will not act on their own behalf.
They won't.
And Gary Porter says our minority city council suffers from internalized racial oppression.
Say that. And so that is so important because if we don't dismantle the system, we end up participating in it, right? So these leaders that he's describing are doing that on their end, but then it makes us so disenfranchised, so hopeless, so disconnected from the system that we're no longer participating either. There has only, as of February 10th, there was only 182 ARPA applications. You go to any other place and say we got $123 million. You know what I'm saying? It should be flooded. However, there's so many obstacles put in place. There's so many people who've applied to things before and got the runaround. There's so many people that watch the same organizations getting money. There's so many people that's been so beaten down by this oppressive system that we're now actively participating in oppression. Another example of that would be the downtown area, right? When they started doing their crackdowns to get the Black and brown peoples away from being so comfortable at the Hippodrome on Worthington, all that stuff. Now there's people that don't even go, great big populations that don't even touch foot downtown because they don't want to be a target. So we're participating in our own oppression at that point. But it's out of our own safety. So it's like, what do you do? Do you fight the system, become a target, try to take it on, or do you keep your head down and just think it's the way it's always been? Both of those answers are incomplete. That being said, bringing up downtown, I saw Shar. He just said that wasn't MGM supposed to fix parts of this? And if y'all want to interconnect corruption, we can interconnect corruption. He said MGM coming into Springfield was supposed to help with that, right? Let's talk about the money MGM owes us. Remember the deal? Not only did they not build exactly what they're supposed to build, we ain't got no extra skyscrapers. They just demolished a lot of our historical properties for no reason. But they were actually supposed to be giving us $25 million per year. And the reason why they were supposed to be giving us $25 million per year since 2017, so it's that 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, the reason why they're supposed to be giving us that money is because with their presence in downtown, any major corporation, it automatically affects the local economy. It automatically takes away from potential economic growth for the smaller businesses because there's no competition. That's how it usually works. That being said, they had an agreement that when they are coming here, they're going to give us $25 million a year. Because they have not met the quotas, because they have not met their quotas in Springfield, they have asked not to pay that money. And because they're friends with Sarno has not required them to pay that money. But let me be clear. This is MGM. They're a $1 billion international organization. I don't care if Springfield didn't make that money. Their organizations make that like it's nothing. So why wouldn't they hold MGM accountable and giving them? How are you giving them a break of all people? You're making sure we're paying our taxes. You're making sure we're paying what you're requiring us to pay as city residents. You're getting your money off of us, the poor, impoverished, especially in comparison to a conglomerate like MGM. But you're giving them the break, a $25 million break in a city that's struggling. How does that add up? Let's take it a step further. You know, white people don't come alone, y'all. When MGM came here, they told their friends about this land that needed saving. And they brought their friends with them to look at investment properties. What did you think they bought, bro? What did you think they bought? Liberty Plaza.
Oh, that's right.
Plaza. So in 2014, MGM's friends bought Springfield Plaza, and they were supposed to, we're going to reinvent this. We're going to take it to the next level. We're going to make mad money. Stores leaving left and right. And then they used the pandemic to say, we don't got it. And they defaulted on their loans. And now the Springfield Plaza is up for auction in worse condition than it was when they bought it in 2014, and they have no responsibility to it. So when we talk about corruption and we talk about lack of follow-through, no one's holding anyone accountable for anything. It's basically just a free-for-all. Whatever works, works. Whatever doesn't, doesn't. And no one's going to be to blame because we try around these Black folks. We're doing more than other people are, even if they're not doing anything. That's what they're saying. And the reason why I brought that phrase up is because that literally came out of our chief financial officer's mouth when I was describing, and when Tracy Whitfield was describing how these ARPA applications are intimidating and it's disrespecting our community because we know this money is here for us. They're like, well, we're doing a lot more than other communities. That's literally what was said on record.
Wow.
So when don't think there's no money in the city. That's the last thing to think. And if we want to take it back just one step further, please remember that Mayor Sarno won his election off of the financial crisis that we were in and the promises that were made in 2007. Springfield was going down financially, so much so that the state actually had to intervene in our financial department. The whole city didn't go into receivership, but our finance department did. And what happens after the state gets connected with your finance department? It's the same thing with going to receivership. You are now in line for an excess amount of funding because you officially need help in the eyes of the state, right? Mayor Sarno has been chilling on so many community block grants, so many relief, different funding resources, so many welfare-based funding sources for 5 cycles. There has been money for a very long time. It just does not get spent on our communities. And that's it.
So let me ask you this. With those pots of funding, and you said a hell of a lot.
Thank you for talking to me, because this is just me. I'll just be at home researching right now. Anyway.
Hey, listen, man, this platform right here, even though I've been criticized saying that I tend to allow too many people access to my platform.
Well, you're going to get talking about me. Half the city love me, half the city hate me. So I'm sorry in advance for the messages you're going to get.
I don't know how that feels, Tiffany.
You don't at all.
I don't know how that feels. But let me ask you this. Where can someone go if they want to apply for any of those pots of funding? Where could they go for help? Is there anybody, any organization, any entity out there that assists with that offers technical assistance?
Okay.
Applications.
So first and foremost, I'm going to have to give the city department, because I really want people to start accessing resources from the city, which have money to do this. Okay. So there is a whole technical assistance department that I'm not sure many people know about. I want to make sure I get the name right. It's ran by Director Shay Swan. It's a newer department, but it's important to know. So let me just fact check myself really quickly.
Take your time.
Because I want you guys to know this information, because they really are supposed to help you. So Springfield has this new department. It's called the Department of Technical Assistance and Compliance. And Shay Swan is a beloved community member, and he is the director.
He is a good guy.
Now, he is supposed to be supporting businesses with their grant applications. He can't help you write it outright, but if you have a basis, a foundation, he can help you strengthen your application. He's also playing a major role to make sure that these grant awardees are in compliance with the law. So he's a part of the approval application process, where he's going to be tracking whether or not what people are getting money for, what people are asking money for, is aligned with what ARPA money can be spent on.
Who makes the ultimate final decision in terms of who gets funds and who doesn't?
I didn't mean to roll my eyes. Sorry. Mayor Sarno. So here's how the process works, because we haven't talked about that. Okay. Once you submit that application, right? You do the application, you complete it, you do your cover sheet, you put your additional documentation, you do the application, you submit it. You submit it to the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity, but you're going to attention whatever committee it's going to. So it'll be attention nonprofit evaluation committee, attention new business evaluation committee. It then goes to the evaluation committee first. This committee comprises of, I think it's 3 people. It's a person from the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity. It's a person from the finance department. And then it's a person from, I believe, technical assistance. Fact check me, I might be wrong. They're supposed to be looking at if the idea is worthwhile, if it's going to have a community benefit, if it should be funded. We've been fighting to get this community benefit out of household and senior applications and other elements, though, because, again, Black people should not be responsible for this great change. You should be able to request money for yourself and get help, and that's enough. There shouldn't be some greater good aspect to it that only Black people have to serve. Anyway, that being said, if it passes the evaluation committee, it then goes to the Rfp Advisory Committee. Now, this didn't exist before. They added this in between the time we talked to them and the time the applications were put out there. And you already know how I feel about this groups like this, Moss. But listen to who's on this committee. You have the clerk, which makes sense. The city clerk is keeping track. You have the department, Shay Swan, the leader of the technical assistance department. Mm-hmm. But then you have the chief financial officer. Plan.
BJ sits on that? TJ Plant sits on that too? Wow.
And the chief development officer, Sheehan. Yo, I'm glad you got it because there's certain things I cannot say because the block is hot. But my guy, how did their how does that connect? All right, I'm gonna be calm, but all of these people are on it, right?
Yep.
All of a sudden, they have to have approval. So these two people, these head of these financial departments, all of a sudden needs to be a part of the approval process for every single dollar that gets spent. Who gave them that authority?
Oh.
Anyway, so they're supposed to be going over. It's so repetitive. They're supposed to be going over if the evaluation committee's evaluation was correct, and then it's literally in the grant. That's what they said. They're reviewing the evaluations committee's evaluation. And then they're supposed to be checking if it's in alignment with the federal law. And then they recommend it to Mayor Sarno. And Mayor Sarno, in his expansive expertise on economic development and community development, gets the final say on who gets funded and who doesn't. And so now that you know this, you can understand how this community music school has managed to get $250,000. How the Springfield Culture Partnership, and the craziest thing about that, and I used to work for the Springfield Culture Partnership. I was the programs and event coordinator for a few months, and the craziest part is that partnership is made up of arts and culture organizations that serve the TDI district. So you have the SCP up here, right? That received $40,000 and $150,000. And within the Springfield Culture Partnership, you have people like the Community Music School that received $100,000 from the state and $150,000 from here. You have the Springfield Museums who received $200,000. So how is this one organization who's encompassed of multiple organizations getting all this money?
All that money.
And that's just real. You can look at SCP's website right now, and the Springfield Springfield Museums and the Community Music School will be listed as strong affiliates and members of the SCP. So how many times can they pay themselves?
And where's the accountability for the fact that they're double dipping? If I had an organization that was getting paid from both the city and the state, I'd be on the front page of the newspaper. Double. Yeah. Probably.
There's no way.
It's absolutely, and which tells me there's probably other parts of funding that they received through the pandemic that's coming.
Of course they did. I was there when they got it. Yo, and I'm just gonna be real. That summer, I was there at a sweet spot. I got hired in April 2020. April 2020, right after COVID, right? And I left in July because I was overworked and underpaid. During that time, it was nothing but dollars coming into the SCP. Nothing but dollars because they knew about the money that was coming and it was flowing. Moss, you remember, it was flowing.
Yeah.
And it was like first come, first serve, kind of like unemployment, right? It was give, ask questions later.
You're right.
File the report later because it's a pandemic. The money had to get out. So looking at the fact that they've been paid since month 1, month 2 of 2020, and they still getting paid. They haven't lost, dog. They haven't lost. But they tell Black people and brown people like me, who's on the ground volunteering hours and hours and hours, oh, we don't got money for you. Why don't you charge them?
Insane.
But it's our reality. Which is
it really is. But the thing is, if we're not prepared, we'll never win. And we're oftentimes unprepared. I mean, it's thank goodness we have you because I gotta fault myself as well. I mean, no one's really looking into the details. And I mean the devil don't just live in the details. That bad boy is having a party in the details.
Spending money.
Yeah, it's happening. So I mean, so if anyone's listening to this broadcast, say they're listening tonight. And tomorrow they wake up and they say, you know what, I'm going to do this. So their first call should be to who?
Okay, so that's a great question. So the question is, who should people call to get help, or the question is, who's the people call to advocate?
Who do they call? If I want to say I'm a business owner, a homeowner, whatever the case may be, and I'm like, yo, I want to access these ARPA funds. Okay, let them tell me no. It's like filling out a credit card report, credit card application. You can either say yay or nay, but I'm going to fill out the application.
Yep.
Do I go down to the city and say, listen, I need to talk with? Should they go to Chase Wan's office?
No, you should actually, and I'll put it in the chat. You should go to the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity webpage. Let me go to it right quick because I believe it's as simple as springfield.gov/ARPA, but I just want to make sure. Go to that page because it already has the applications there for you. And it has the applications in both English and in Spanish.
Okay.
For you to access. And it also has a frequently asked questions on here. I haven't even told you guys the best part about this grant, which is why you need to jump on it, because it was elected to be a grant process, right? Because it was elected to be a grant process, it doesn't stop the fact that it's an eligibility-based grant. So if you live in Springfield, have a business address in Springfield, or are starting a business in Springfield, you can access these funds if you describe your COVID-19 impact story. End of story.
Wow.
Because of this, the grant actually has no denials. And that's not something that, that's not something that they've been promoting either. It should be on billboards across town that there's no denials for this grant. Here's what happens. Here's what happens when you apply. They're either going to award you what you've asked for, or they're going to say, hey, we're not going to give you this amount of money. We're going to give you this much money instead. And then you can either accept or reject the award. The other option isn't denial. It's something called redirection. So because you're eligible for this funding automatically, if you're from Springfield, have a business in Springfield, starting a business in Springfield, and you are impacted by COVID-19, they have to tell you what's wrong with your application, and you now have the opportunity to fix it. I have a scoop for you in a minute that I'm going to tell you about that is going to irritate everyone, but I think it's something that people really need to know, and it's something that I haven't been able to share publicly, and I think this is a perfect platform. Anywho, so if you are redirected, you are not denied. They have to tell you each thing that's wrong with your application. If they miss one, that's boo-hoo for them. Because as soon as you fix what they've listed, you can resubmit it and they have to give you that money.
Oh, wow.
That's another reason why, if you just don't feel comfortable, meaning that you're not, you don't feel strong in grant writing, that's okay. Like Darryl said, get it done, submit the application, make them tell you why it's not a good application, and then you fix it based off of that. And then you have evidence and their words so that once you fix that, they can't go back. It's like double jeopardy. You can't go back and say, oh, this, that, and third is missing as well, right? So you submit it, you hopefully get awarded right away. If you don't get denied, you get redirected, and you do what they say to fix it. You submit it again, and you get that money.
Now, what documents do you need to have? Do you need to have, like, if you own a business, do you need to have all your bookkeeping records, secure financial infrastructure? Are they asking for all that? Tax records, the whole nine?
Yeah, they are asking for all that. Yep. I will say, though, again, the law doesn't require it. And so here's the thing that I'm trying to work out on the advocacy end. I'm going to pretty soon, especially I'm waiting for May, but pretty soon once these annual reports come out, I am going to start asking for details on the applications that were submitted. I need to know how many applications were awarded that submitted their tax returns. I need to know how many applications that were awarded that did this, that, the third. And if the numbers aren't matching, right? So if all these people who've been awarded, if there's a discrepancy showing that there's applications being pushed through without these documents, because in the guidelines, it says that they can change the process for anyone and they can omit some of the things that they require. So it's basically a free-for-all. They have this long application, but they've reserved the right to say, this application doesn't need that, we'll push it through. So we need to start looking at the evidence of which applications are actually getting pushed through with all this information. And if there's even an inkling, and I mean an inch, I'm going to take an inch and make it 20 miles. If there's even a few applications that have gotten money and did not turn those things in, it's over for all of them. I will be submitting ARPA applications, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not submitting all the things that they've asked for because by law, I don't have to. The federal law doesn't require it. And I'm not trying to get caught up with nobody. I'll give you an example. If you write in the question, one of the questions that's on there is how much does your household make? How much in total does your household make? One, it's irrelevant, right? But two, if you answer that and then turn in your tax returns and you have more money listed on there or there's some type of discrepancy, they can use that information against you. I don't know how they're going to use that information against you, which department they're going to give it to or whatever like that. The details don't matter. It's the fact that I'm not giving them that much access because by law, I don't have to. It's the same way when you're in a police interaction, right? They're going to be asking you to do all. It's the same type of thing. If you do not have, sorry, I know I just froze just now. If you're in a situation with a police officer, that police officer is going to try to get as much information out of you as possible voluntarily, even though by law you're not required to give them that information. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sorry, am I still breaking up?
Oh, just a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's like a short delay, but it's good. We can still hear you. Athena Gamble said, what's the difference between the new business assistant application and the small business assistant application?
So new businesses are for three things. One, if you are less than a year old. So you're a business, you're certified, you have your licenses in order, all of that, but you're less than a year old, so you don't have any tax returns or any certifications and things like that, then you're a new business. You're also a new business if you haven't started at all. Right? So if you have just an idea, you don't have anything physical, you might not even have the products yet, you're just an idea, you're also new business. The last category that I did not mention is many of our business have been operating without being registered to the Commonwealth. So it doesn't matter if you've been selling plates for 10 years. If you don't have that registration, they're still going to consider you a new business. It has to be a small business, which would be the difference would be a registered business that has been registered for 5 years or more. So those are the biggest differences. Oh, there is a financial difference as well. I believe the small business, you can't make more than $1 million. If you make more than $1 million annually, you're going to have to go into the economic development and job creation bucket. So those are the biggest difference between those.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I got those applications memorized.
I was about to say, how you remember all that stuff? I have no idea. And somebody had to rely on me. If they said, tell me everything Tiffany said, I'm like, go to my Facebook page, go to my YouTube
Watch
page,
the rewind, turn it back.
Just go back and listen all over again. So if there's anybody out there who's just logging in and you miss it, don't worry about it.
No, worry about it. Apply to ARPA.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying if they missed out on your information, they can go back and watch this all over again. Yes. But whatever you do, there's ARPA funds out there, man. Just apply. Just apply. Don't think about it. Don't get intimidated. Just say F it and go apply. What's the worst that can happen? If you don't apply, these dollars will continue to go to Chicopee, Hamden, Wilbraham, Ludlow, Palmer, wherever these people live.
The pockets of our executives too.
As dude said in that meeting with City Council of Whitfield, well, I'm a Chicopee kid. I grew up going to Springfield, but damn it, you don't live here. And the city of Springfield has a very severe displaced tax base. Mm-hmm. So we're paying taxes, but all the tax dollars are going outside the city. We're a majority minority community, but we're still being run by folks who live outside the Springfield city lines. I'll put $20 by the time Dominic leaves office, he's going to move out to Long Meadow with the rest of his family anyway. So, I mean, people need to understand, if you're going to live here, you need to make a point of controlling where you live. If you don't own it, you cannot control it. I'm going to say it again. If you don't own this, you'll never be able to control it. You'll always be a slave. I don't give a damn what anybody said. Don't tell me about there's no Emancipation Proclamation for this.
It's not. And one of the things we got to remember too, so on the state funding, it's not going to be the same where more money might be coming to Springfield, the city of Springfield, but it's not going to be the same where all of it is going to be in the hands of Sarno. So there's a lot of state departments that are getting funding. So you have to be tracking all these grant programs that are popping up from these ARPA fundings. It's going to take a little research, but there's a plethora of funding sources that are now available. For example, the Massachusetts Growth Capital, the MDCC, has the new applicant grant as well as the inclusive grant. They were just given, I believe, $75 million for small businesses. And a lot of you guys might be eligible. So if you've grossed more than $40,000 a year and you have 2 employees or more, you can have access to these funds. So right off the back, I'm thinking of like Self Juices and like those medium-sized businesses. All of you got, there's a whole nother pot of money that you can touch. Mass Mutual, it still has $50 million for Black businesses from across Massachusetts. So there's other funding sources that you should be looking at. And then I want to reiterate that it's the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity. So it's not the Department of ARPA. There is definitely more funding coming down the pike. And we're setting the precedent of what our relationship is going to be with this funding. So if we're showcasing that we're not going to access these funds, that's more justification for them to create more obstacles next time, because we didn't even get past these ones. Absolutely. So definitely looking at all these different pandemic funding sources and taking the time to get our documents straight, our organization straight, our goals straight, what we want this city to look like is important, because once you complete your ARPA application, it's only a few adjustments to then now apply to Mass Mutual, to then now apply to somewhere else. So that's why it's so important to just get this ball rolling.
Brother Gary Porter asks, can we have this sister present at Pamusa? Already talked to her. We already got locked in. I just have to give her a date.
Thank you. I'll be there.
The panel session is called Follow the Money Trail. And as you can see, she's been on it way before I asked her. It only made sense to ask her. She hit me up like, how can I be down? I'm like, oh no, I already had your name down.
I did, because I saw that. I was like, I want to be a part.
You're definitely going to be a part of that. So I just have to set the date up and make sure I find the right panelists to come on and really break down where this money is at. So I'll be reaching out for your help, Tiffany. I appreciate you coming on tonight. The information was freaking phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. So for the listeners, for folks who are trying to get this stuff together, I know you're stressing. A lot of folks have. It's one thing to run a business. It's another to take care of all the administrative responsibilities. And that's our problem. Fiscally, we may be stable, but on paper, we look really weak because we don't know how to manage our books. Yeah. And that's cool for now. Yesterday, that was cool. Today, we have to recognize we have a problem. Tomorrow, we got to come together and figure out how to resolve that. So next Monday, I think I'll bring on an accountant, a bookkeeper, an attorney, and a few other folks who can come on and talk with you about what you need to do. Because I know all my years of city down working with the city, they're always, anytime it comes down to grants, funding, all that stuff, the thing they focus on is financial infrastructure. And if your infrastructure is weak, they weed you out. So it's like, how do you tighten up your infrastructure if you're not getting the funding that you need? And they know this, and it's a game. So what we need to do is make sure you have access to the resources to help you strengthen your business, your household, your nonprofit organization, your religious institution, whatever the case may be. There's funding out there for you.
And then just use the free resources we have. So like if you don't have the finances to pay for a personal this, that, the third, we have places like SCORE Mentors, we have Valley Venture Mentors, we have the Massachusetts Small Business Association, all have free mentors and resources. In fact, the Massachusetts Small Business Association and SCORE has a resource library where you can go in there and find your profit and loss statement templates. You can find your budget templates. You can find all these different independent study style information on how to get your bookkeeping straight and accounting. So we understand that there's not always money for you to just go and hire someone. If you are the do-it-yourself type, there's also free resources that are very user-friendly that you can be using as well.
There it is. You know what? Panel sessions are good, but I'm with Dina Gilman says, are there other informational sessions for this info? Let me tell you right now. This is our informational session.
I'm saying that.
There's nobody else doing this type of work for the benefit of folks who look like all of us. Let me throw it out there. It just is what it is. So this system right here, we have to make sure that we support it. See, here's the downside. You do all this phenomenal work, and people don't understand the amount of time, effort, and sacrifice that goes into this work. So if anything, you need to go ahead and set up, I don't know, just set up a separate Cash App where folks can just donate to keep you going, because you still have bills, you have a family, you have things you need to do.
And kids.
And this work really requires that type of commitment. And if we want access to this information, because I'm not gonna lie to you, my job is to open the door so that people get this information. She has this information, but to tell her that she needs to do this stuff, continue to perform for us, gather this information and present it for us, without us making sure that she's taken care of financially so that she can live her life, we'd be dead wrong. So go to her page, follow her. If she has IG, follow her. Tiffany has all types of stuff going on that folks need to be a part of. Tiffany is Black and Brown Wall Street. About 8, maybe 9 years ago, we kicked off Black Wall Street Springfield. So I know there's folks who thought there'd be some drama between the two, but no, that's the basic premise of Wall Street. That we get together, we work together, and we make this happen. So Tiffany, love you. Appreciate you
so much more.
I just hope this ain't the last time you come on and share information, because the last time you came on, you just dropped, you did a mic drop, and then I ain't seen you for 6 months.
Yo, because I be in these streets, dog. I be going. I'm here. Let me know.
Be in the streets, man. So I'm here. Information. We have a newspaper. We got the radio. We got all the other shows. You gather info. I'll be on. Bring the wood. I'll bring the matches and the gas.
That's what I'm here for. And you know what? I have to be honest with you. I have been on chill, right? Yep. They wanted me, Tiffany, work with us. We're gonna get this done. We're gonna do it equitable. And I give you one chance, but look at where we're at. So now I'm ready to run up. It's time to turn up. Listen.
When people talk about equity, you need to understand. It's like this is what it's all about. It means that we have to do our research. Hopefully, a couple other people will jump on and get in that game with you. But it's hard to hold people accountable when you don't have all the information. It's like being in a court of law and you have no attorney and you don't know how to prove your point. You know that you've been robbed, but you can't prove it. What Tiffany is doing is giving all of us the information and the resources to prove that we just got robbed. Literally.
You can follow it line item by line item.
People who look like us, we're not getting these funds. Pignelli and team, that whole crew of rich white dudes. Listen, man, there's poor white folks in the city who aren't benefiting and still being robbed. So there's class issues, there's race issues here, and the thing is, we can fight back. But listen, man, ego aside, everybody jump in, get in where you fit in. Let's get this work. If you own a business, you have a home, whatever it is, tomorrow or tonight, go to springfieldcityhall.com.
Get that application.
Just start filling out. Fill out everything you can fill out and just send it in. If you leave, listen, I remember when those PPP loans came about and Nathan Bill got funded. And I remember they didn't even fill out the application. Everything, he basically cussed the mayor out every response was cussing the mayor out. And they still gave him like $75,000. So the thing is, these folks are getting free rides. We have to work for ours.
Yep.
So if they're going to put obstacles in play, and it's the intellectual obstacles, our job is, all we need to do is read, man. Do our homework.
And hold people accountable. Like I said, I can't stress enough that all this can't be done without the Sarno administration and our city councilors. Like they're both the two sides of one coin in most instances, and it shouldn't be there. We have checks and balances for a reason, and they're both not acting in the ways that will benefit our community. So this is an election year, y'all. That's all I'm gonna say. Next year is an election year, y'all. That's all I'm gonna say.
2, make sure you challenge Mike Fenton.
Dog.
In Ward 7, challenge Tim Allen. Challenge anybody that has not been working in our favor. And when I say our, I'm talking about all of us, man. We can't just have, a chocolate covered board that's doing white work.
Literally.
More emphasis on the white chalk than there is the blackboard. So right now, when I'm down in Connecticut and I'm telling my people, listen, man, we have a majority minority city council. They're like, yo, that's dope. And I'm like, no, it's not dope. It's even worse.
Yeah.
Because we have people who look like us, who've experienced some of the things that we've experienced. We have one black city councilor who says, I'm not a black city councilor. I'm a city councilor who just happens to be black. When that Negro told me that, I was like, Lord, this dude. But it's real stuff. So I ain't going to hold everybody because I'm going to get to some music. I want to thank Tiffany for being here. Go to springfieldcityhall.com, download those applications, fill out as many as you can, and just send them in. Have everybody in your house. Make them deny everybody. Fill them out. Right, Tiffany?
Yeah, because if they deny everybody, that gives me more ammo to just flip everything over, to burn it all down. If I could get that evidence on paper that is blatant discrimination, like what I'm tracking right now, dog, that's like, bleh. It's like it's guns loaded, dog.
If
so get those applications in. It helps me a lot.
If y'all seen that movie, The Harder They Fall, Mama, who's the Regina? What's her name? That Ro, the one that was down with Rufus Buck. Yeah, that would be you. With all the smoke, just let's go. So with that being said, yo, man, thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart.
Bye, guys.
All right, y'all. Everybody, this is 90.7 WTCC FM. We are broadcasting live at this point. We're going to flip it over. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, or I should say the lecture from Tiffany Alicia. Go back, watch this thing all over again. She dropped some jewels. I know when I get home, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Got to watch it over and over again. So, folks, do what it do. Put your work in. Fill out them ARPA applications and make it happen. With that being said, we say much love, much peace, much respect. My name is D. Moss. Love you.